My name is Charles Walker. I'm 73 years old. And if you've got a minute, let me tell you about the day my own son told me to get out of the house I built with my bare hands. It was 12 years ago when Ethan showed up at my doorstep with a duffel bag, two kids half asleep in the back seat, and a wife with mascara running down her face. I still remember the sound of the gravel crunching under his tires. It was early evening. I was sitting on the porch reading the paper, and when I saw his car pull in, I thought someone had died. Tough week. I asked as he got out. He didn't say a word, just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring at his feet. Then he muttered, "We lost the house." His home, his roofing business, his truck gone. Bankruptcy. He'd signed a bad deal with a supplier, couldn't deliver, got sued, lost everything. They'd been living on credit cards for months. "I just need a few months, Dad," he said, "until I get back on my feet." I looked at him, then at my grandkids still in their booster seats, half asleep, clutching their tablets like life preservers. "Come inside," I said. I cleared out the guest room for him and Claire. Turned my workshop into a kid's bedroom. Packed up a lifetime of tools, paint cans, and sawdust memories, all for just a few months. I figure maybe 6 months tops. He'd find a job. Claire would get back to teaching. They'd rent an apartment, move out, and I'd have my peaceful retirement back. But 6 months turned into a year. Then 2. Every time I brought it up, there was a reason to stay. "Dad, rent prices are insane right now. Claire's still finishing her certification. The kids are settled in school. And I bought it. Every time. Meanwhile, I paid the bills. Food, gas, electric. Even helped Ethan with a used truck when his finally gave out. They never offered rent. Not once. I kept telling myself I was doing what any good father would do. But the truth is I was slowly disappearing in my own home. First, they took over the living room. Furniture rearranged without asking. Then it was the kitchen. Claire preferred her way of organizing everything, so mine ended up in boxes in the garage. Eventually, they turned my sunroom into a home office for Ethan's new business venture. The only place I had left was the garage, and even it started to feel like enemy territory. One morning, I walked in and found my fishing rods tossed on the floor to make space for Ethan's product samples, some kind of vitamin supplements he was trying to sell online. I picked them up, brushed off the dirt, and said nothing. That's how I coped. I said nothing. Until last Thursday. I came back from the hardware store with a new part for the lawnmower. I was gone maybe 45 minutes. When I pulled in, I saw Ethan and Claire on the back porch talking in hushed voices. I walked in the kitchen, poured myself a coffee, and sat down. A few minutes later, Ethan came in, stood with his arms crossed, and said, "Dad, we need to talk." Those words always mean trouble. He sat down across from me and started talking like some HR manager. "Listen, Claire and I have been thinking it's getting kind of tight in here with the kids growing up, and we're all just kind of on top of each other." I didn't respond, just sipped my coffee. "So, we were thinking it might be a good idea if maybe you found a smaller place. Something quieter. You know, a retirement apartment or something." I thought I misheard him. "I'm sorry, you want me to move out?" I asked calmly. He raised his hands like he was being diplomatic. "I mean, just think about it. You're retired. You don't need all this space. It's just practical. The kids are teenagers now. They need rooms of their own. Claire's working from home. I've got calls all day." I stared at him. "This is my house," I said slowly. "I built it. You're the guest here, Ethan." He gave me that same look he used to give when I grounded him as a kid. The mix of defiance and guilt. "Dad, come on," he said. "It's not like that. We've been here over a decade. We've made a life here too. It's just logical." Logical. That word sat in my gut like a rock. He had just politely asked me to leave my own home, the home I built for my retirement, after 12 years of rent-free living, because it would be better for everyone. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I just stood up, set my coffee down, and walked out to the garage. I sat there for 2 hours in silence. Didn't even turn on the radio. I stared at the locked metal cabinet in the corner, the one nobody touches. Inside that cabinet were documents Ethan didn't know existed. And I realized right then, if he was going to play games, he had no idea who he was playing with. The next morning, I made a call. And that was the moment this story changed forever. The morning after Ethan suggested I move out of my own house, I called David Carlson, a man I hadn't spoken to in years. David's not family. He's not even really a friend. He's my former attorney, the guy who handled the veteran property status when I transferred this house into a non-transferable protected trust 15 years ago. I told him everything. David didn't laugh. He just sighed and said, "Charles, do you still have the original papers?" "They're in the garage." "Locked." "Good. Don't give copies to anyone. And don't mention my name around your son. You'll hear from me soon." I hung up and went to the garage. Opened that cold, metal cabinet, dug past my Army footlocker and old tax records, and pulled out the red folder. Title: Trust Agreement. Letters. All signed, sealed, notarized. I sat at the workbench, flipping through those pages, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. At 2 p.m. that day, Ethan barged into the garage without knocking. "You're being childish," he said. "You just stormed out like a 5-year-old yesterday." I didn't turn to face him. "You asked me to move out, Ethan." "I didn't ask. I suggested," he said. "There's a difference." I turned around slowly. "You've been living in this house for free for over a decade. I fed you. I covered your bills. I raised your kids half the time while you played businessman in the garage." He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "Don't talk. Just listen." He stood stiff. "You have 60 days to move out," I said. "You, Claire, the kids, the computers, the vitamins, all of it. Gone." He laughed. "You're not serious." "Try me." He shook his head. "Where are we even supposed to go?" "Not my problem. Should have thought of that 12 years ago." He looked stunned. Not angry. Not hurt. Just genuinely confused, like the concept of me drawing a line had never even entered his reality. "You can't just kick us out," he said finally. "I can, and I will. The trust says I can. You're not even legal tenants. You're guests, and the guest room is no longer available." He stood there for a long moment, jaw tight, then turned and walked out without another word. Claire didn't speak to me for the next 3 days. Jamie and Lily avoided me like I was a ghost. Not that I blamed them. They were kids stuck in the crossfire. But on day 4, I found Ethan in the kitchen at 7 a.m., drinking my coffee like nothing happened. "So," he said casually, "we've talked it over. 60 days isn't realistic. Claire's got work, Lily's got dance, Jamie's got finals. 59 days now," I said without looking up from my toast. He smirked. "You really want your grandkids living out of a car?" "No," I said. "That's why I gave you 60 days. You should have been saving since year 2. He slammed the mug down. "You're unbelievable. After everything we've built here, this isn't your house. It's a home. No, it's a crash pad you turned into a hotel suite with room service." He stormed out. That night, Claire left a printout of apartments on the kitchen counter. All of them too expensive, too far, or not suitable for the kids. I didn't comment. 10 days passed. Ethan didn't bring it up again, but I could hear them arguing at night. Whisper fights through the walls. The kind where no one wins. I mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky faucet, reclaimed the garage, threw out Ethan's boxes, moved my tools back where they belonged. The house felt different. Not mine yet, but not theirs either. On day 14, a white envelope appeared on the hallway table with my name scribbled on the front. Inside, a handwritten letter from Ethan. "Dad, if we leave, we have nowhere to go. You know that. I don't understand how you can be so cold. I never thought you'd turn on your own son. I hope you're happy. No signature. Just that." I folded the letter and threw it in the fire pit out back. That was the last time he tried guilt. The next tactic was worse. Day 15. I was in the garage polishing my old rifle. Not for any particular reason, just a habit. You clean the tools you respect. I was halfway through oiling the barrel when Claire walked in without knocking. She had that look. Not the crying one, not the bitter one, the calculated one. "We had a conversation with someone yesterday," she said, arms folded. "Oh yeah, a lawyer." I put down the cloth. "He says this could be considered a legal eviction." I didn't answer. Claire stepped forward like she was negotiating a hostage situation. "You didn't give us anything in writing. You never made us sign a lease. Technically, we have occupancy rights, especially since we've been here over a decade." I looked at her. "You've never paid a dime." "That's not relevant under Ohio law," she snapped. "Occupancy is occupancy. He says we could file a claim and stop you from removing us." I leaned back on the bench. "So, you're threatening me with a lawsuit now?" Claire didn't blink. We're trying to protect our children. By dragging your father-in-law to court. She raised her chin. You forced our hand. I stared at her for a long time. Not with anger, with disappointment. She used to bring me coffee on Sunday mornings. We used to laugh. Now she was reading off legal printouts like a news anchor. Tell Ethan to meet me in the kitchen at 8, I said, and bring whatever lawyer he thinks he has. She turned and walked out without a word. That evening at 8 sharp, Ethan sat across from me at the kitchen table. Claire stood behind him like a paralegal. On the table, a printed letter. I didn't touch it. Ethan cleared his throat. This is a formal response to your verbal request for us to vacate the property. I sipped my tea. It outlines our understanding that we are long-term residents and that any removal would require a legal process through the court. We're willing to avoid litigation, of course, if we can reach a compromise. What compromise? I asked. He looked at Claire, then back at me. You sign over partial ownership of the house. Just a share. That gives U.S. housing security. We keep taking care of the place. You stay, obviously. But long-term, we need stability. I stared at him. Hard. You think I'm going to hand you the deed because you squatted long enough? You make it sound like we're criminals. No, I said. You make it sound like I'm senile. I stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the red file. The one from the garage. Set it on the table. Flipped it open to the first page. Read it. Ethan frowned. What is this? Trust documents. Title protection. Veteran non-transferable status. This house isn't even legally mine to give away. It's protected. Claire grabbed the papers. Started skimming. You put the house into a trust? 15 years ago. Just before you showed up broke. Ethan went pale. Why? Because I knew one day you'd either try to sell it, rent it, or steal it. His mouth opened, then shut again. I built this house for my retirement. I built it with these hands. You've been living here 12 years. Not once did you offer help. Not once did you ask what I needed. Claire slammed the file shut. This doesn't change that we have residency. Then file your claim, I said. Waste your money. The trust has priority. You're not tenants. You're guests. And I just officially revoked that invitation. I got up. You've got 45 days left. Don't test me. I left the room. Heard Claire's voice trembling. Ethan wasn't talking. The next morning, a different car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't Claire's. It wasn't Ethan's work buddy. It was a gray Mercedes, tinted windows. A woman in a black suit stepped out, carrying a briefcase. I opened the door before she rang. Mr. Walker? She asked. Who's asking? My name is Janice Wilburn. I'm with Child Protective Services. My heart stopped. What? We received an anonymous tip regarding unstable housing conditions and verbal hostility in the home. I'd like to speak with you and the residents. You're kidding. She wasn't. I let her in. Ethan and Claire were still upstairs. She asked questions about who lives here, who pays the bills, who disciplines the children. I answered calmly, directly. Showed her receipts, mortgage records, the trust. Ethan came downstairs mid-interview. His face froze when he saw her. Claire followed, holding Lily's hand like they were preparing for war. Janice turned to them. Mr. and Mrs. Walker, I'll need to schedule a private follow-up with both of you. The children will not be removed. This is just an inquiry at this stage. She handed over a card and left. I turned to Ethan. You did this. His silence was all the answer I needed that I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, not because of guilt, but because I was calculating, planning. While Ethan and Claire probably thought I was falling apart, I was quietly moving pieces. The next morning, I put on my jacket, made myself coffee, and went to the garage. Pulled out a rusted green toolbox I hadn't touched in years. Beneath the screwdrivers and tape rolls was a stained notebook, hardbound, leather cover, yellowed pages. Inside, names. Contacts from a different life. One of them was Travis Beck, former Marine, now a property inspector for the city. I hadn't seen him in almost a decade. Last I heard, he owed me a favor after I helped fix his mother's furnace in the dead of winter. Wouldn't take his money. I called him. Charlie, he said. Damn, you're still alive? I need an inspection. Of what? My own house. Silence. He laughed. You're serious? Dead serious. I need the city to come in and take a look. Just routine. And I need it on paper. On your place. On the condition of the garage, specifically. He didn't ask questions. Just said, I'll be there Friday. Friday came fast. While Ethan was at some networking event and Claire was dropping Lily at dance, Travis arrived in a city truck with a clipboard and badge. We walked the perimeter. I showed him the cracked concrete, the exposed wires Ethan never fixed, the plastic crates stacked to the ceiling, unmarked, full of supplement bottles, powders, brochures. I need a write-up, I said. Unsafe storage. Electrical hazard. Unauthorized commercial use. Travis raised an eyebrow. You setting someone up? Just tell the truth, I said. And send me a copy. He did. The next day, I printed 4 copies of the report and dropped one on the kitchen table, right beside Claire's mug. That afternoon, the screaming started. Claire stormed into the garage, waving the report. What the hell is this? An official city inspection. You called the city on your own home. No, I said. I called them on your legal business inside my garage. Ethan walked in behind her. You're escalating this now? No, I said. You did that when you dragged CPS into it. Now we're even. Claire threw the paper on the floor. Ethan picked it up, scanning. This says we could get fined. You will be fined. I sent a copy to code enforcement and the HOA. You're insane. No, I said calmly. I'm done being used. He tried a different tone. Dad, come on. You don't have to do this. We can figure something out. No more figuring, I said. You've got 42 days left. Ethan sat down, quiet now. His foot tapped against the table leg. Claire paced. Then he said it. What if we just don't leave? I nodded slowly. Then I file an unlawful detainer, and you'll get a visit from a county sheriff. He smirked. We could drag this out for months. No, you can't, I said. I recorded our earlier conversation. The one where you admitted the house is mine and that you've been staying temporarily. Want to hear it? He looked at Claire. She looked pale. That night, they didn't eat dinner in the kitchen. They stayed upstairs. The next week, Claire started packing. Small things, framed photos, books, clothes from the laundry room. Ethan pretended nothing was happening. He mowed the lawn, washed his car, told the neighbors they were considering a move. But I knew what was coming. I knew Ethan too well. He wouldn't go quietly. And I was right, because one morning I opened the mailbox and found a letter from a lawyer. A real one this time. Inside, a formal notice requesting a family mediation meeting to discuss property transition and housing security. A bluff, but a dangerous one. I poured myself a drink, sat down at the dining table, and stared at the letter for a long time. Then I made another call. This time, not to a friend, to a realtor. The letter from the lawyer stayed on the dining table for 2 days. Unopened. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it was, a scare tactic dressed up in legal language. But I wasn't scared. I was angry. And anger, when you're my age, doesn't come with shouting. It comes with precision. So I called Melanie Ruiz, local realtor, sharp as a tack, and owed me a favor from years back. Her dad served with my cousin Nam. I didn't tell her the whole story. Just said, I want the house listed. Quietly for now, but seriously. She didn't ask why. 3 days later, the sign went up. For sale. By appointment only. Claire saw it first. I was trimming the rose bush when she stomped out the front door barefoot, like she'd woken from a nightmare. You're selling the house? I didn't answer. You can't do that. We live here. Not for long. She looked around, like the neighbors were watching. This is harassment. No, I said calmly. This is what happens when people overstay a welcome by 12 years. She stormed back inside. A minute later, the front door slammed again. Ethan came out. Hair messy. Eyes puffy. That smug confidence? Gone. Is this some kind of game now? Nope. He glanced at the sign like it was a tombstone. You actually listed it. With a licensed realtor. Photos go live next week. Open house on Saturday. He laughed bitterly. You won't get away with this. Oh, I already have, I said. But where will you go? He snapped. You think you're going to cash out and what? Rent a condo in Florida? This place is all you've got. I looked at him. You forget one thing, Ethan. What? This was all I had. Until you moved in. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Claire came out again. This is illegal. We should get an injunction. You can try. And they did. A week later, a notice appeared taped to the door. Petition for temporary stay of sale. Ethan had gone down to the county courthouse and filed an emergency motion, claiming I was evicting family in an unreasonable manner. I showed the notice to Melanie. She smiled and said, "It won't stick. The trust gives you sole authority." Still, the court date was set, 2 weeks out, so I doubled down. I had photos taken, emptied the garage, fixed the gate, hired a landscaper, made the house shine like it hadn't in years. Meanwhile, Ethan and Claire sulked in silence. They didn't speak to me. They didn't speak to each other, just whispers and slammed doors. Then came Saturday, the open house. At 11 a.m. sharp, cars began pulling up. Couples with notepads, retirees, a young family with twins. I stayed on the porch, reading a newspaper, watching strangers tour my living room while Ethan glared from the upstairs window like a trapped animal. Claire followed one couple around the kitchen, pretending to be helpful. "Oh, this stove? Works perfectly. It's such a warm home. Great neighbors, too." I almost laughed. By 3 p.m., Melanie had 5 interested buyers. Ethan finally cracked. He came down the stairs red-faced and sweating, marched into the backyard where I was sitting. "This is a joke," he said. "A complete circus. No, this is business. You're ruining our lives." "No, you ruined your own." And then, the twist. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. He threw it at me. It landed face up. A will. My will. A copy I hadn't seen in years. Old. Outdated. Dated back to when Margaret was still alive. It named Ethan as executor and left the house to him in the event of my passing. "This changes things," he said smugly. "You want to play hardball? Fine. This is still on file. It shows intent. We could challenge everything." I picked up the paper slowly, looked it over, nodded, then smiled. "You're right," I said. Ethan froze. "I did write this. And you know what else?" "What?" "I revoked it 2 years later. And I have the recorded revocation notarized and filed. With witnesses." He blinked. I pulled my phone out and played the audio file. A woman's voice. "This confirms Charles Walker's revocation of the last will dated 2009. Ethan's face drained of blood. I stood up. Game over. Courtroom 3B smelled like old paper and pride. Ethan sat beside Claire at the petitioner's table, dressed in a blazer that didn't quite hide his nerves. His lawyer, a smug guy in his 30s named Grant something, kept patting Ethan on the shoulder like he was prepping him for a TED Talk. I sat alone. Didn't need to say much. I had documents, facts, and time. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Honorable Judith Green, entered and called the room to order. Petitioner Ethan Walker is requesting a temporary stay on the sale of the property located at 1156 Willow Glen. Mr. Walker claims this is a familial residence and that the sale would cause undue hardship. "Mr. Walker, proceed." Ethan's lawyer stood up, voice slick and polished. "Your Honor, my client has resided in this home for over a decade. He and his wife have contributed to its upkeep, raised a child within its walls, and formed deep community ties. My client asserts that the respondent, Mr. Charles Walker, his father, has acted out of emotional instability and is attempting to evict family without due cause." He smiled like he'd already won. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Walker, your response?" I stood slowly. No theatrics, just facts. "I have here," I said, holding up a stack of papers, "a notarized deed placing the property solely in my name, a revocation of a previous will, a current living trust listing me as sole trustee, and a report from the city citing multiple code violations in the garage, where Mr. Walker has been conducting an unlicensed business. I also have a CPS report opened under false pretenses by Mr. Walker against me." That part caught her attention. "You filed a CPS report?" she asked Ethan. His lawyer cut in. That matter was dismissed. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Still relevant if it was filed maliciously." "Go on, Mr. Walker." "I also have an audio recording," I said, "of Mr. Walker acknowledging he was staying temporarily. I can play it if needed." Ethan shifted in his seat. Claire gripped his hand. "But the most important thing I brought," I said, reaching into my coat, "is this." I pulled out a check, made out to me, from Ethan, dated 11 years ago. It was never cashed. $500, I said. Memo line reads, "For moving in. Temporary." Gasp from the benches. Even the judge blinked. "You're saying your son paid to stay temporarily?" "No, Your Honor," I said. "He offered. I refused to cash it. But I kept it, because I knew someday he'd forget who opened the door." The judge leaned back. "Mr. Walker," she said, addressing Ethan, "how do you respond to these materials?" His lawyer whispered fast. Ethan's jaw clenched. "We believe these items are taken out of context." She cut him off. "Enough." She turned to me. "Mr. Walker, you said you filed the house under a trust." "Yes, ma'am." "Trustee. Me. Irrevocable. Then this court sees no grounds to stay the sale. The motion is denied." Ethan stood up, furious. "This is my home. You can't just throw me out." Judge Green didn't flinch. "You're not on the deed. You're not on the trust. You filed a fraudulent CPS report and operated an illegal business from your father's garage. Consider yourself lucky I don't refer this to the DEA." The room went silent. Claire was crying now, quietly, into her sleeve. Ethan stood frozen, pale. I gathered my papers. The judge gave a final nod. "Good luck, Mr. Walker," she said, and she wasn't talking to Ethan. Outside, the sun hit my face like a warm reminder I had survived them. Ethan followed me into the parking lot. "This isn't over," he hissed. I looked at him, tired and calm. "It's been over for a while. You just didn't know it. You're still bitter about the past," he said. "No," I said. "I'm bitter about giving you everything and watching you turn it into leverage." He shook his head. "You're going to die alone, old man." I smiled. "No, I'm going to die in my house, and you're going to pack up what's left of your pride and leave." He didn't say anything. He just walked to his car and slammed the door. Hard. I stood there in the quiet, breathing. For the first time in 12 years, I felt air in my lungs that didn't belong to someone else. The for sale sign came down. The sold one went up. It was official. Final paperwork signed. I gave Melanie a firm handshake and a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving since the 90s. She earned it. The buyers were a young couple from Oregon, polite, respectful, offered me $80,000 over asking. I took it. I wouldn't need that much where I was going. But Ethan, he needed it desperately. 2 days after the court decision, I started receiving letters. Handwritten, typed, emailed. Not for me. For him. Apparently, my neighbors hadn't been as blind as I thought. They remembered things, broken mailboxes, loud music, ignored HOA rules, late-night deliveries from strangers. Whispers of crypto scheme, garage server rigs, shady partners. One woman, Martha from across the street, wrote, "I always wondered why he never spoke to anyone unless he needed something. I just thought maybe he was private. Turns out he was hiding. Someone posted the court documents online. Reddit got a hold of them. Then Facebook groups. Then, somehow, the local news. One evening I sat in my recliner, coffee in hand, watching Channel 9. There he was, Ethan's photo, next to the headline. Man tried to block father from selling own home. Court says no." The anchor's voice was calm, but the damage was volcanic. Claire came down the stairs the next morning, pale and quiet. She didn't say a word. Ethan didn't leave the bedroom until noon. He didn't look at me. He just walked past me, into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stood there staring into it for almost a full minute. I didn't say anything either. He sat at the table, head down, didn't even pour a glass of water. And then, softly, like a man watching his house burn, he said, "They canceled all the contracts." I didn't respond. Every investor pulled out. The server company froze the hardware. Said they can't be associated with controversy. Still, I said nothing. One guy even demanded a refund. On a handshake deal. Only then I looked up. "You burned every bridge," I said. "Now you're wondering why no one's offering you a boat." He stood slowly, hands shaking. "Are you happy now?" "No," I said. "I'm free now. There's a difference." He wanted to scream. I saw it, but nothing came out. Just silence. Then he walked upstairs. I never heard him cry, but the wall was thin, and drywall doesn't hide heartbreak. The movers came 3 days later. Not for me. For them. I didn't lift a finger. Didn't offer help. Didn't offer water. Just sat in the shade with my coffee and watched Ethan and Claire pack 12 years into 20 cardboard boxes. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk, because I remembered what it felt like to be alone. Even if they never did, they left behind furniture, dishes, broken lamps, cheap art on the walls they thought made the place theirs. But the house never was. It was Margaret's. It was mine. It was built with hands that worked, not hands that waited. That night, I walked through the empty rooms. The way the light hit the hardwood, the smell of lemon cleaner, the silence. It wasn't the same house they moved into. It wasn't the same man they moved in with. I was older now, but somehow stronger. And as I sat on the back porch, sipping my last cup of coffee there, I realized something. They never really wanted the house. They just didn't want me to have it. And that's what made all the difference that I locked the door one last time. No ceremony. No long look back. I didn't kiss the walls or whisper goodbyes to the porch swing. I didn't know it that. Or maybe it didn't know me anything anymore. 12 years. That house had seen Margaret die, seen me wither, seen Ethan grow, fat off silence and audacity. Now it was quiet. Mine again. Sold. Gone. And I was leaving too. I loaded 2 bags into the back of my old Chevy. One with clothes, the other with paperwork and a photo of Margaret that had somehow survived 4 decades of life and 1 decade of Ethan's disapproval. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming space. There's a place 3 hours north, quiet, coastal, just enough fog to feel like time slows down there. I'd found a cabin through an old army buddy's grandson. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, a stove, and peace. That was all I wanted now. That and distance. Ethan never called. Claire didn't write. I didn't expect them to. A week passed. Then 2. I read books, fished off a pier, learned how to make coffee without burning the pot. The kind of small things that feel like victories when you've been at war for too long. No one asked me questions. No one judged my silence. I became invisible by choice. And then, on a Wednesday, someone knocked on my door. I opened it slowly. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't Claire. It was a young woman, late 20s maybe, sharp eyes, black blazer, holding a leather folder like it might explode. You Charles Walker? I am. She stepped forward, cautious. My name's Marissa. I used to work with your son. I blinked. In what way? I was his operations manager. When he launched the crypto platform, I ran logistics, outreach, finance, until he cut my hours and ghosted me. I opened the door wider. Come. She didn't sit, just paced. I followed the story online, she said. Saw what he tried to do to you. Saw the court decision. And you came here because you're not the only one he lied to. She opened the folder. Inside, contracts, emails, wire transfers, screenshots, internal memos, evidence of fraud, of evasion, of names, and people who had no idea their money was being funneled into Ethan's personal accounts. I've held on to this for over a year, she said. I was scared, but after what he tried to do to you. She paused. I figured it was time someone finished what you started. I looked at the pages. They weren't just damning. They were devastating. You want me to go to the police? No, she said. I want you to go to the people he hurt. The ones who trusted him. The ones who still think he's some misunderstood genius who just needed more time. I sat back. You think I want revenge? No, she said. I think you want closure. This is how you get it. She left the folder on my table. Walked to the door. Paused. I liked your son once, she said. Believed in him. But people like him don't stop until someone makes them. And then she was gone. I didn't open the folder again that night. I just stared at it. Thought about what it meant to go back. Thought about what it meant to leave it all alone. Thought about whether Margaret would want me to let sleeping dogs lie or finally bury the whole damn pack. And then I stood, picked up the folder, and began to write letters. Not to lawyers, not to judges, to people. Because if Ethan was going to burn bridges, I'd make sure everyone saw the fire that I didn't do it for revenge. I mailed those letters with hands that didn't shake. I didn't write threats or accusations. I wrote truth. Calm, clean, undeniable truth. To every investor who had emailed Ethan over the years. To every name listed in the reports Marissa gave me. To every client who'd been promised returns that never came. I attached copies, receipts, timestamps, and I signed my name. Not Mr. Walker. Not concern party. Charles Walker. Father. Veteran. Homeowner. I mailed 23 letters that week. Then I waited, but I didn't wait long. By day 4, the emails began. By day 6, the phones rang. By day 10, I heard from a federal investigator. They had already begun digging. Apparently, Marissa had filed a sealed complaint last month. My letters weren't the match, they were the wind. They fanned it into flame. The knock on my cabin door came a month later. Not sharp, not urgent, just hollow. I opened it and found Ethan. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. His shirt wrinkled, his hair uncombed, eyes puffy, mouth dry. He wasn't carrying luggage. He wasn't carrying pride either. Just a printout. One of the letters I'd sent. "I know it was you," he said. I didn't respond. He stepped forward, hands shaking. "They're coming after me, Dad." I nodded. I lost everything. Another nod. Even Claire left. Took the baby. Said she's tired of cleaning up after me. I didn't ask where he'd go. I didn't ask what he'd do. Because for once, he wasn't here to fight. He was here because the floor had disappeared, and I was the only ledge he remembered standing on. "You could have just let it go," he whispered. "I did," I said. 12 years ago. And then you told me to get out of my own house." He blinked, looked down. Then he did something I hadn't seen him do since he was 12. He sat down on the porch floor, knees drawn up, shoulders hunched. He cried, not loud, not for effect, like a man finally cracking under the weight of every lie he'd sworn was truth. And I didn't touch him, didn't hug him, didn't kick him either. I just let the silence stretch. Because sometimes that's all that's left between fathers and sons. Not speeches, not forgiveness, just silence. He looked up one last time. "Are you happy?" I shook my head. "I'm free." Same words as before. But this time, he understood. He stood up, didn't ask to stay, didn't say goodbye. He walked back down the gravel road, head low, hands in pockets. And I watched until he disappeared into the trees. That night, I sat with Margaret's photo in my lap. 12 years ago, I let grief make me small. I let love turn into silence. I let my own son turn a house into a prison. But now I had a cabin that smelled like cedar and coffee. I had my name, my voice, my truth, and peace that didn't need permission to exist. Let Ethan rebuild. Or don't. Let him remember me however he chooses. But me? I'll remember him as the man who took everything from me and gave me myself in return.